In 1954, Marilyn Sheppard was brutally murdered in her Ohio home. Her husband, Dr. Sam Sheppard, claimed a mysterious intruder was to blame, but prosecutors said it was cold-blooded murder. What followed was a media circus, a sensational trial, and a decades-long fight to uncover the truth. Hey guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I am doing well. I am settling back into my, I guess I could say, regular routine. I call it my regular routine when my kids are in school.
The school routine, that time of year.
I feel like it's regular.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in our first week of school here in Central Florida. I know there's still a few weeks before a lot of you go back to school, especially if you're more north. I know every time I tell my family up in New York that my kids start school in early August, they're so shocked because they have like another month of summer vacation still.
It's crazy. Well, I went to Target today. I had to get a few things and went to the school supply section. My kids actually don't start till Monday. So when this comes out, they will already be in school. But I'm waiting to get like their finalized list. And I realize like there isn't a whole lot left. So I'm realizing like, oh yeah, it's still so early to us. But in my world right now, I'm kind of late to the game. Yeah. So I'm trying not to panic.
Yeah.
And we'll get things when we get them. I mean, I'll do my best.
Well, it's funny actually that you mentioned that because I have kind of just a funny, relatable mom moment, back to school panic moment.
Sure.
So my youngest son, needed a new backpack this year. Well, he didn't really need one. He wanted one because his backpack last year was the kind that has like the handle and wheels, like a rolling luggage suitcase. I feel like that's what they need for how many books they have. But so he had one of those. Well, this year he is in 7th grade and he's like, I don't want to have the rolling backpack anymore. I want to carry my backpack on my back like I
want scoliosis. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that he literally has 100 books and they weigh 100 pounds.
Right.
But he wanted that. So I was like, okay, we'll get you a backpack, buddy. Well, my older son has a backpack that he really likes. And so I just kept saying, I'm going to get the same backpack for my younger son. But, time just gets away from you. You keep saying, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. Well, don't you know? Before day before school starts, I'm realizing I never got my son a backpack. And so and of course at the same time, that's when you also realize that the old backpack, like you can't even use it for like the first day and then get a new backpack because somehow over the summer the old backpack has completely been destroyed. It has the straps are disconnected. So I'm like, no, you actually need a new backpack, like right now.
Right.
So I went online, tried to Amazon one. I found one that looked decent enough to at least get us started for the year. That was supposed to be a same day delivery, delivered by 10 p.m. Well, this was on Sunday night, and I'm like, perfect. If it,
oh my gosh,
great. So I did ship around like 6 p.m. I got the notification that it shipped, and I went to bed thinking like I'm going to wake up, it's going to be here on the doorstep. Well, of course, it was not. Instead,
I love your positivity. I would have known at 6 o'clock it's over for us.
No, instead I woke up to a notification from Amazon saying that they were sorry that my order was late. My delivery was late. So then of course now I'm in full panic mode. Like, what am I gonna do? Now can I go to Walmart before school this morning? Like first day of school? I didn't even know what I was gonna do. So what did I do? Instead of worrying about that, I went and took my walk like normal, obviously. And thankfully when I got home, Amazon had delivered the backpack. So it literally got delivered like an hour and a half before we had to leave on Monday morning.
I love that for you because seriously, mine would be like, sorry, we're stuck in Alaska with it. You're going to have to get a new address or drive here and meet us. It would be something crazy. So I'm glad it worked out for you though. That's and for your son, because I know like you don't hear the end of those kind of things.
I was going to send him to school with his books in like an Aldi bag. He's very glad that the backpack arrived. Like, sorry, buddy. We'll get you a backpack tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. I love it.
So we'll get into this story. This one has kind of a lot going on. This is a story that would actually go on to inspire the movie The Fugitive. But in 1954, this was playing out in real life in Bay Village, Ohio. Marilyn Reese Sheppard was born April 14th, 1923 in Cleveland, Ohio. She was known for being active and social, and she really enjoyed bowling and water skiing. She was also very active in the community and even had leadership roles in community organizations like the Bayview Hospital Auxiliary and the Junior Women's Club. Marilyn met her future husband, Samuel Holmes Sheppard, back in junior high school. So they were truly high school sweethearts, I guess junior high school sweethearts in that case.
Yeah.
And Sam was the classic all-American athlete. He played football, basketball, and ran track. After high school, Sam left for LA to attend med school. He actually came from a very prominent medical family, so this was sort of just the natural way for him. His dad and his two brothers actually co-founded Bayview Hospital. He asked Marilyn to join him, and in February of 1945, the two of them got married. Eventually, they did return to Cleveland, where Sam built his career as an osteopathic neurosurgeon. He served as the official doctor for the Bay Village Police and Fire departments as well. Sam and Marilyn had one son who they named Samuel Reese, which was a nod to each of his parents. On July 4th, 1954, everything changed. In the early morning hours, Marilyn, who was 31 years old and 4 months pregnant at the time, was brutally murdered in the couple's bedroom. She suffered 25 blows to the head and face with what appeared to be a sharp object. She was left completely unrecognizable after this brutal attack. Sam, who was actually taken to the hospital and placed under 24-hour police guard, told the officers what happened that night. He said that he fell asleep on the couch downstairs and woke up to the sound of his wife screaming. He then ran upstairs where he saw what he described as a shadowy figure standing over the bed. When Sam tried to intervene, he said he was struck from behind and knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he could still hear someone moving through the house, so he got up and chased a man through the screened porch and down to Lake Erie, which was about 50 feet below the couple's backyard. Sam claimed there was a struggle on the beach by the lake and that he was knocked unconscious again. He woke up in the surf, bruised and bleeding, with injuries to his eye and mouth, as well as several loose teeth.
According to Sam, he managed to get back to his house and call his friend and neighbor, J. Spencer Houck, who happened to be the Bay Village mayor. At this point, it's about 6 a.m., and Sam calls over and says, "My God, come over. I think they've killed Marilyn." When the mayor arrived, Sam was dazed, he was wet and bleeding, and his right eye was swollen. The mayor's wife went upstairs and found Marilyn lying face down on the bed with her pajama pants pulled down to her legs and her top raised above her waist. This suggested that Marilyn may have been sexually assaulted at some point, though an autopsy later confirmed that she was not. Her legs were tucked under the bed's wooden footboard, and her face was so badly disfigured that identifying her was difficult. Blood was spattered across the walls and door in the room. The Sheppard's 7-year-old son, Sam Jr., was asleep in the next room and never woke up during the attack. His uncle, Dr. Richard Sheppard, took the little boy from the house before he was told what happened. When the mayor and his wife arrived that morning, the front door was open and the family's dog was roaming the house. There were no signs of forced entry. The mayor notified the police of the murder, and Police Chief John Eaton responded, along with the county coroner, who was Dr. Samuel Gerber, which is apparently, if you're named Sam, Samuel, Sammy, you've got a place in this community because everyone has the same name.
I feel like that's how it is in like historical context. Like anytime you talk about the early 1900s or like the 1920s, I feel like everybody has the same name. They weren't very creative until much later. I feel like maybe the 60s and 70s, we started introducing some new names.
Maybe, but you can't tell me that in 10 years we're not going to have a lot of Jacob, and Emily's and everything.
True.
So good names repeat themselves, I guess. Police also contacted Dr. Richard Sheppard, which was actually Sam's brother, who lived nearby, and he was the one to pronounce Marilyn dead. The last people to see the Sheppards before Marilyn's death was their neighbors Don and his wife. On the evening of July 3rd, around 6 p.m., the Sheppards visited Don's house, and a couple of hours later, Don and his wife and kids went over to the Sheppard home. The two couples arrived back at the Sheppard house around 10 p.m. and put their children to bed. The adults then settled in to watch a late-night movie. Sam was exhausted from a long day at the hospital that included trying to save the life of a 17-month-old child that was hit by a truck that day. And at around 11, he laid down on the downstairs couch, still fully dressed, and he fell asleep almost immediately. At 12:15 a.m., Don and his family headed out. Don's wife locked the back door and reminded Marilyn to go to bed.
Soon, detectives Robert Schottky and Patrick Garreau from Cleveland joined the Bay Village Police in the investigation. They started by doing a methodical search of the property that included pulling open drawers and cabinets and rifling through them. Between the house and the beach, they found a small green cloth bag, and in the grass nearby, they found several of Sam's personal belongings, including his watch, a ring, his fraternity keychain with a pocket knife attached to it, and a key ring labeled SS. These items were all stained with blood. Sam's wallet was also found, and it still had $3 in cash inside. Sam later told investigators that his watch had stopped working properly the week before after it got wet when it was raining, but Dr. Gerber observed blood smears on the crystal, and detectives reported that the watch actually stopped at 4:15 a.m. before starting again later. I would be curious to know how they determined that it stopped and started again later.
Right. And like that specific time, I totally agree. If it was just like an hour earlier or something, I don't know how you'd know that.
I'm like,
the
prove
exact
it. How
time
do
it
you know?
stopped.
Prove that.
Yeah. Tell us exactly.
Right. So at first, authorities theorized that the motive may have been robbery and that Marilyn was killed when she encountered these intruders upstairs. They believe that the assailant discarded the green cloth bag while fleeing from Sam towards the lake. Inside the house, fingerprint dusting revealed a palm print on a desk in the study. And out on the beach, boys who had joined the search turned up a pair of cheap sunglasses and a white handkerchief in the sand. Those same boys, one of them was actually Mayor Hook's teenage son and his friend James, also discovered a rag smeared with what looked like either blood or paint inside a Jaguar parked in the garage. One of the more confusing pieces of evidence came from the bed that Marilyn's body was found on. When she was turned over to be examined, 2 tooth fragments were found beneath her, but Dr. Gerber confirmed that all of Marilyn's teeth were in fact intact. Despite the violent nature of the attack, neighbors did not report hearing any disturbance that night, and the Sheppard's dog, Coco, never made any noise either. And that's really interesting because neighbors said that Coco would bark so loud in the mornings that people in the neighborhood would actually wake up because of it. So if the dog was startled or caught off guard in those early morning hours or in the middle of the night, it likely would have been barking. After the murder, the dog Coco was actually found running loose outside, and a nearby resident took her in. Meanwhile, authorities organized a search of the lakefront. They were trying to find a murder weapon, so they dragged the area with the help of some local boys and even considered using an electromagnet to scan the water. Police noted that when the mayor first saw Sam after the attack, he was wearing wet clothes. He actually had on light corduroy pants, loafers, and stockings. According to Don, who's the one who was with the Sheppards the night before, he said that Sam had been wearing a t-shirt, but by that morning, the t-shirt was gone. Detectives also looked into Dr. Lester Hoverston, who was a house guest of the Sheppards but had left town shortly before the murder.
As police dug deeper, 2 missing items became a top priority in their search: a gun and the t-shirt Sam had been wearing when he claimed to have fought off an intruder. Bay Village Police Chief John Eaton ordered large magnets to be used in Lake Erie near the Sheppard home in hopes of finding the gun. I think it's going to be hard to find anything anyway, but when you start saying one of the main lakes, Lake Erie,
Right.
I don't see. I'm like, oh, I probably would give up right away because how on earth? Dr. Gerber, the coroner, described Marilyn's killing as a crime of rage and said the attacker, quote, rained blow after blow on her with savage fury, end quote. Despite the brutality, though, there were no signs that Marilyn fought back at all. In the early days of the investigation, police questioned 6 people, all of whom were released. A 7th person was held for additional questioning, though they were never considered a strong suspect. Meanwhile, Sam was hospitalized at Bayview Hospital, which is the same hospital that was operated by his own father and brothers. It was revealed that Sam had a broken neck. His brother, Dr. Stephen Sheppard, told the press that x-rays confirmed the injury and that Sam would need to wear a steel and leather neck brace for 6 to 8 weeks. I did not know we ever had steel and leather. It just sounds like a deluxe one. We don't really seem to have leather and steel anymore. In addition to the neck injury, Sam had bruising across the entire right side of his face, damage to his upper jaw, a swollen right eye that was completely shut, swelling at the base of his skull, and 2 broken teeth. Dr. Stevens said that Sam was not physically or emotionally able to be questioned any further, but that didn't stop the police from trying. Deputy Sheriff Rossback attempted to interview Sam in the hospital, but he was interrupted by Sam's lawyer, William Corrigan. Police Chief Eaton was also denied access to speak with Sam. He was frustrated by this and made it clear that if the family continued to block interviews, another physician would be brought in to examine Sam. Which you can understand why they'd say, your family owns this hospital, you're being treated by your family. We don't know exactly what's going on. We have to take your word for it. They could just be protecting him. Unfortunately, that palm print that was found on Sam's desk had not provided any useful leads. A red-stained towel that was found in Sam's car was being tested to determine whether the stain on it was blood or not. Sam's friends and family described him as someone who could fall asleep very easily due to the demands of his work. Sam said he didn't remember anything after he laid down at 11 p.m. until the time he woke up to his wife's screams. Investigators did a second, even more thorough search at the Sheppard home, but didn't turn up any new evidence, though they did take note of some paperback novels found in the home. There were titles such as Blood on My Hands and I Killed My Wife, which is not the one you really want.
Right.
That's not the one you want in your house. So Chief Eaton also hired professional divers to search the waters of the Sheppard property for the missing weapon. Unfortunately, they weren't even able to get into the water due to rough conditions, and one of the divers admitted that finding the weapon would be unlikely. He said the search was still important for public reassurance. A piece of pipe near the beach was examined, but quickly dismissed as being unrelated to the case.
I kind of think it's interesting that they're like, yeah, search is a total waste of time, but like we really need to do it just to appease the public.
And to say that,
I know.
They're just kind of like this, hands going and like, look, over here, guys, there's nothing here.
Right.
And nobody can see anything. So it does feel like, is there not a better thing you guys could be doing than fake looking for something?
Right. Like when like that you're basically saying like that it's a waste of time. Like it does seem, and then but just to admit that I thought was really interesting to just be like, this is really just for optics and just to make you guys think we're doing something.
Are you guys watching?
Right, exactly.
You guys watching?
Yeah, wild. But despite the setbacks, Dr. Gerber emphasized that the search for the missing murder weapon and for Sam's t-shirt would continue. He later reported that Marilyn had suffered 25 separate wounds to her head and face. These injuries included deep cuts, skull fractures, brain hemorrhaging, and bone-deep lacerations. The injuries were consistent with a blunt object, they thought possibly a fireplace tool, a carpenter's instrument, or maybe a piece of wood. And some other additional details also emerged. Marilyn's watch was found on the floor in Sam's study, and police reported finding bloodstains on Sam's pants. Dr. Gerber estimated that Marilyn died between 4 to 5 a.m. and noted that Sam actually did not report the crime until 5:50 a.m. Dr. Gerber also confirmed that there was no sign of forced entry anywhere in the house. As for a motive, Mayor Hoke and Chief Eaton initially suspected that a drug-addicted intruder may have been responsible, and they searched the home for narcotics. There is some support for this theory, of course, since Sam was a doctor and he had a medical bag that he had at home, and they found that bag had been rifled through, as well as multiple drawers and in multiple rooms had been ransacked. But that idea kind of fell apart when investigators discovered that he had morphine sulfate and other sedatives in his home that had been untouched. And they were actually not even in the same locations that Sam said that they were in. In the days following Marilyn's murder, Sam and his family decided to bring in legal help. They contacted Arthur Petersilge for professional advice. The family knew that a crime had been committed, and they were concerned about the potential impact on the hospital, which, as I said before, the Sheppard family owned and operated. So they're like, this could be really bad for us if it comes out that you killed your wife. So we probably should get a lawyer. At that time, Sam was considered emotionally and physically unfit for questioning. But before all questioning was actually officially shut down, Sam did manage to give a brief description of the man who allegedly attacked him. He said that this man was taller than he was, which meant that he was more than 6 feet tall. He was of medium build, and he was wearing a white shirt, and he had bushy hair. But that is all Sam could remember. So after Sam's attorney consulted with his doctors, aka his family members, about his medical condition, one of the attorneys, that was William Corrigan, recommended that the interrogation be stopped. Dr. Stephen agreed and said that continued questioning would actually slow Sam's recovery, and he further said that Sam had already shared everything he knew anyway. Neither of the attorneys had been formally retained, but both had a long-standing personal relationship with the Sheppard family. And their involvement, of course, meant that the police were effectively barred from any further questioning of Sam at the hospital. This has to be so frustrating for the authorities. Like we just said, not only are you dealing with, you have a family of doctors and people at the hospital that are, kind of shielding him from the
Right.
police. But now they have attorneys on their side, and these people aren't even paying the attorneys. The attorneys just have personal relationships with their family, and they're kind of cashing in on favors. But what a nightmare situation it is for police trying to actually investigate and get to the bottom of like what happened to Marilyn, because every avenue they try to go to, it's like, nope, sorry, there's people in this community that are actually shutting you down.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into so much more of the story after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
My summer makeup routine is basically sunscreen, a little highlighter, and Thrive Cosmetics Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. That's it.
So basically the same thing as your winter, spring, and fall routine?
Rude, but yes. But that's because it works. This mascara makes my lashes so long that it looks like I actually tried, even if I've been just running around all day. It wraps each lash from root to tip. There's no clumps, no smudging, and no flaking.
I was just kidding, and I totally agree with you. I actually love that mascara too, and it's one that survives the Florida heat, which really is like a product endurance test. Plus, when you take it off, it just slides right off with warm water, and there's no scrubbing, no there goes half my lashes kind of moments.
And here's the best part. Every product you buy from Thrive Cosmetics helps communities thrive. Thrive has donated over $150 million in products and funds. So you're not just getting lashes that could cut glass, you're actually doing good while you do it.
Maximize your look with minimal effort. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/moms for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/moms.
Did you know that your liver is the second largest organ in your body? It's out here doing over 500 jobs for you. And I'll be honest, I wasn't exactly sending it a thank you card until I found Dose for Your Liver.
Yeah, your liver is basically your body's filter. It flushes out unwanted elements, breaks down what you eat into essential nutrients, stores vitamins and minerals, and still somehow has the energy to regulate cholesterol. I mean, it really is the hardest working roommate you've got. And Dose makes it easy to give it some love. One shot of Dose for Your Liver is equivalent to 17 shots of turmeric juice without me actually having to take 17 shots of turmeric juice, which, no thank you, doesn't sound very good. Dose for Your Liver is gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan.
Plus, their science-backed formula promotes liver function, aids digestion, and supports better energy levels over time. So basically, it helps your body's filter keep crushing its 500-plus jobs without you having to lift more than that tiny little bottle.
Save 25% on your first month of subscription by going to dosedaily.co/moms or entering moms at checkout. That's dosedaily.co/moms for 25% off your first month subscription.
And now back to the episode. So before the break, we were discussing the murder of Marilyn Sheppard, who was found murdered in her bedroom in July of 1954. Her husband, Dr. Sam Sheppard, claimed he was attacked by a bushy-haired intruder, but with no forced entry, a quiet dog, and missing items like Sam's shirt and a gun, suspicion quickly turned towards him. The Sheppards were a well-known and well-liked family in Bay Village, especially amongst young professionals. Sam himself was respected for his athleticism and generosity. In fact, just hours before Marilyn's death, Sam had performed an open-heart massage on a toddler who had been hit by a truck. Tragically, the child did not survive. Marilyn's murder rattled the community, largely because homicide was so rare in Bay Village. The last murder that had taken place there was more than a decade earlier. But in a nearby town, an unsolved killing had occurred just a few months earlier. On April 11, 1954, Victor L. Carino was shot and killed during an attempted robbery at Schneider's Tavern, which is just a short distance from the Sheppard home, and that murder remained unsolved. Marilyn's parents, Thomas and Jane Reese, last saw their daughter a week before her death. She had just shared with them the happy news that she was pregnant with their second child. That Sunday, the Reeses spent the day boating and having dinner with Marilyn, Sam, and their young son. Mrs. Reese remembered that her daughter was cheerful, active, and excited about her new pregnancy. She gushed about how she and Sam had been high school sweethearts. The Reeses were obviously devastated at their daughter's murder, but they were also confused and just couldn't imagine who could have committed such a crime. In the midst of the growing public attention, Sam offered a $10,000 reward, which would be about $120,000 today, for information leading to the arrest and conviction of his wife's killer. Sam's attorney gave a statement and said that Sam had been seriously injured in the attack and continued to suffer from its effects. He said he fully cooperated with authorities and told them everything he could remember. He also declared that he had lived an honorable life and said that the reward was being offered by Sam and his family in hopes of finding justice for Marilyn. It wasn't until 4 days after the murder that police began formally questioning Sam. At that time, he was still at the hospital, and it had been announced that his attorney, William Corrigan, was in complete charge of his legal affairs. Right from the get-go, there was a standoff between Corrigan and Dr. Gerber over whether or not Sam, who was still recovering from a neck injury, was physically well enough to be interrogated. I feel like we don't really hear, nobody gets away with this much. It's like, okay, great, you have a neck injury, you're in the hospital, they're treating you. We'll be right there,
Right. As long as I feel like now, as long as you're not under like the influence of narcotics, which maybe he was taking pain medicine, but usually they won't. I mean, I feel like maybe they will. Maybe the police will question you whenever you're drugged up in the hospital, but I feel like they still maybe won't.
Yeah, probably not.
Unless they can get you like to not be on narcotics,
Right.
like when they're questioning you. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like, I could be wrong, but it feels like, how about that? That it feels like his attorney was just giving anything
For
they
sure.
could for him not to be
Oh, in this
questioned.
case, 100%. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even when they were under subpoena, William Corrigan fought off multiple attempts to move Sam either downtown or to the morgue for questioning, which no thanks, don't do
No.
that. They just kept insisting that Sam was unfit to be questioned.
So eventually, Dr. Stephen Sheppard, which, if you are still following along, that's Sam's brother, told reporters that Sam was now willing to cooperate. That same day, Assistant County Prosecutor John Mahone took over the investigation after meeting with the Bay Village Police, and he demanded that both Sam and his young son appear either voluntarily, or if they won't, then they need to appear under subpoena. And he accused the Sheppard family of unprecedented stalling. He specifically blamed Dr. Stephen Sheppard for limiting investigators' access to Sam. Authorities expressed further frustration over the family's lack of cooperation and pointed out that friends, attorneys, and even regular visitors were allowed to see Sam freely while he was in the hospital, but yet he was just too ill and too under the weather to be able to see the police, and they were consistently blocked from talking to him.
That's where you lose me. If anybody can just come to visit you, then
Right.
you are just blocking this one,
For sure.
one thing.
Yeah. Sam's brother, though, said that he'd already been interviewed 4 times and that they were simply just prioritizing his recovery at this point. But officials didn't buy it. They viewed this protection of Sam as literal obstruction of justice and a major delay in the case. Mahone actually told reporters that the state had already prepared its case and no further interference would be tolerated. He ordered another search of the Sheppard home, which once again turned up nothing new. In the meantime, Sam was telling the media that he wanted to help the authorities find his wife's killer, and his brother even tried to arrange for Sam to be questioned in a private location without the press, but Dr. Gerber described the situation as one of the most unusual cases of his career, and he said that it was very unique that Sam was being shielded by a family of physicians. On July 9th, 1954, Sam issued a public statement in which he denied rumors that he was refusing to talk about his wife's murder. He reiterated that he was willing to cooperate and described the severity of his injuries and said he was still in shock and in pain himself after the attack. Sam repeated that he had already shared everything he could remember, and he mentioned that he had put out a $10,000 reward for information. Sam was offered to take a lie detector test twice, and he refused both times due to his alleged emotional state. As suspicion continued to swirl around Sam, another local crime raised questions about whether a violent intruder might have actually been responsible for Marilyn's murder. Apparently, just 3 days before she was killed, there was a burglary at the home of Larry Carman, about a mile from the Sheppard home. This break-in occurred between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m., and several valuable items were stolen, including a shotgun, 2 revolvers, a diamond ring, and a watch. The thieves entered through a second-story window, and when they couldn't get the back door open to leave, they kicked it from its frame. Police collected fingerprints from this scene, and they noted that the viciousness of the break-in resembled the brutality of Marilyn's murder as well.
Later that same day, Sam was taken back to his home to reenact the events of the night his wife was killed. He calmly walked investigators through his version of events, showing where he found her body, where he was allegedly attacked, and where he claimed to have fought off the intruder down by the lake. During this walkthrough, Sam showed little emotion and even appeared irritated that there were onlookers. He demanded that the spectators be removed. He ignored visible bloodstains in the bedroom and referred to the killer as, quote, the person who clobbered him. Sam said that after he regained consciousness in the house, he stood up, retrieved his wallet from the floor, and went to check on his wife. At that point, he realized his t-shirt, watch, keychain, and ring were all missing. The missing t-shirt was considered a piece of key evidence by investigators, but Sam said he couldn't recall the specifics about it. Later in 1958, two boys would find a fragment of the shirt near the Sheppard home, but no blood was present on it. Sam described how he slumped over in a chair and fell asleep that night, and he identified the exact locations where this happened. He said when he woke up to the screaming, he went up to the bedroom and found Marilyn's head and neck covered in blood. He felt for a pulse, and when he confirmed she was dead, he covered her with a sheet. Then he called his brother and the mayor for help. Is this where the lights went out in Georgia is coming from? Like, truly, when all of a sudden I hear mayor, you're calling the mayor in the middle of the night because your wife's dead? Heard that. I should probably Google that because it probably is true. So one detail that stood out, though, was that Sam never mentioned checking on his 6-year-old son, who had been asleep in the next room the entire time, which to me, I would agree that is a huge thing to have not done, knowing your wife is dead.
I would agree, but I will say I don't have, obviously, personal experience with a situation exactly like this. And of course, I feel like he should have, and maybe he did check on his son and just didn't mention that in his account of, that's things that went on that evening, because that kind of took a backseat. Like, yes, I went to the room and checked if my son was okay. But I will say that I have been in like a very serious situation where I had a child in the house that I needed to like just keep in his own room. And he ended up being in his room for like a long time while we were handling the situation that was going on in the main area of the house. So I do understand why, like, and not that we didn't remember that he was there or forgot about him, but just that, like, the child that is okay wasn't like a huge part of the story that day,
Totally. I think it's just because he didn't outright say, and I went to my son to make sure he was okay, closed the door quietly so, I could take care of what was going on with Marilyn. It just seemed like he was like, oh, Marilyn was killed. Almost like in my head, it sounds a little like, well, I know she was the only one that was hurt. And why do I know that? Because I could have had something to do with it. That's kind of where my head is with that. Authorities did point out that there was very little physical evidence of a struggle in the home and that blood evidence was inconclusive. They did note that Marilyn's injuries suggested that she may have tried to shield herself from the attack. During questioning, Sam opened up about his marriage and said the only disagreement that he and Marilyn ever had was when he took a former Bayview Hospital employee to a wedding and the woman lost her watch at the event. Sam replaced it for her without telling Marilyn, which caused tension when she later found out. Duh. Like, that seems like you haven't had any fights and this is your big fight? Yeah, this is a huge fight. Otherwise, he said the relationship was free of any serious problems. When he spoke about Marilyn, he said, quote, she was the only girl I ever loved and ever will love.
By early July, the investigation took a turn when reporters began suggesting a possible connection between Sam and a 24-year-old former medical technician from the hospital named Susan Hayes. This is actually the woman that Sam bought a watch for. Sam was questioned about his relationship with Susan during a 9-hour session with the assistant county prosecutor. And a few days later, Susan spoke to a reporter over the phone and confirmed that it was Sam who contacted her while he was in L.A., not the other way around. She said that she had attended a wedding with Sam that March, along with several other couples. She did say that Marilyn was not there, and at that wedding, Susan lost her watch, which was something important for her work. And when she later mentioned this to Sam, he felt bad and then surprised her with a replacement. Susan said that it was a generous gesture, but there was nothing romantic about it. She said that she did like the watch, and it was a very nice watch, but it wasn't worth all the trouble that it was causing her now. On July 20th, 1954, the Cleveland Press ran a front-page editorial under the headline, Getting Away with Murder, and they openly pressured the authorities to act. The very next day, they doubled down on that with another editorial titled, Why No Inquest? Do It Now, Dr. Gerber. By July 22nd, Dr. Gerber caved to public pressure and announced that an inquest would be held, and he subpoenaed Sam to appear. The hearing was actually held in a Bay Village school gymnasium, and it was packed to capacity with spectators. Reporters and other media crew were given front row seats, and microphones were installed on both the coroner's bench and the witness stand. The entire inquest was also broadcast live. Sam was questioned for more than 5 hours over the course of 3 days about Marilyn's murder, about the state of the couple's marriage, and about his relationship with Susan Hayes. His attorneys were not allowed to intervene.
On July 23rd, Sam admitted under oath that he and Susan had spent a week together in LA just a few months before Marilyn's death. This contradicted his earlier claims that his relationship with Susan was merely casual, and it gave prosecutors a potential motive: marital trouble. Sam's admission to having more of a relationship with Susan was the headline moment of the first day of testimony. 8 other witnesses, including friends, police officers, and neighbors, also took the stand. Dr. Gerber told reporters that he lacked the funds to bring Susan Hayes back from California to testify in person. Detective MacArthur also introduced a new theory. He said scientific tests allegedly showed a trail of blood from the murder scene to the downstairs area, but it had been wiped clean. And that claim would later go on to be challenged. From there, though, the media coverage intensified and papers ran wild with the story. Sam was portrayed as a serial adulterer. Unverified reports of multiple affairs being a motive for the murder were circulated. In reality, there was never any official trial testimony that confirmed any extramarital relationships other than what was going on with Susan Hayes. By late July of 1954, the media pressure had reached a breaking point. On July 28th, the Cleveland Press ran an editorial titled, "Why Don't Police Quiz Top Suspect?" And of course, this is referring to Sam. They wrote, quote, "Now proved under oath to be a liar, still free to go about his business, shielded by his family, protected by a smart lawyer who has made monkeys of the police and authorities, carrying a gun part of the time, left to do whatever he pleases," end quote. 2 days later, another front-page editorial titled, "Why Isn't Sam Sheppard in Jail?" was printed.
Can you imagine, like, just every single day, the papers are printing headlines about you, and they're like saying stuff like this. And even for the police, like the police have to be like, "We're trying, like we're like literally trying. We don't know what else to do." Yeah, what a wild case. What a wild story.
They're doing all but saying, "Sam did it, and here's how I know how," or "he told me he did it," or something. That night at 10 p.m., police finally arrived at Sam's father's home and arrested him for the murder of his wife. When he was brought down to City Hall, there were tons of reporters, photographers, and curious looky-loos surrounding the place. Sam requested to have his arraignment delayed until his lawyer could be there, but authorities moved forward immediately. Sam was arraigned and held for the grand jury. From the moment of his arrest until his indictment on August 17th, the media coverage was absolutely relentless. Headlines were painting him as guilty before there was even a jury in place. And we still have so much more to get into after one last break to hear a word from this week's sponsors. You know how most kids' vitamins are basically candy in disguise? 2 teaspoons of sugar, chemicals you can't even pronounce, and gummy additives that my son definitely doesn't need.
Yeah, and then you're the bad guy for not letting them have vitamins for dessert. And that's why I like that your son is actually taking Hiya now. It's a superpowered chewable vitamin made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy additives.
Exactly, and he actually likes them, which is shocking because he's beyond a picky eater. Plus, they sent this cool reusable bottle with his first order and a bunch of stickers so he could decorate it himself. Now he's more excited about vitamins than about cleaning his room, which, fine, it is a low bar.
Hiya is made with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies and supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, all tested in a GMP-compliant lab, so you know they're safe and nutritious. They're sent straight to your door so you can check kids' vitamins off your mental list for the month. And if you're tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens, Hiya now has Kids Daily Greens plus Superfoods, a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids, packed with 55-plus whole food ingredients to support brain power, development, and digestion. Just scoop, shake, and sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious, nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy.
We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/moms. This deal is not available on their regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/moms and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. Growing up, people always said, money doesn't grow on trees, and I actually believe them. But a tiny part of me still keeps an eye out for a cash-sprouting oak.
And since that tree clearly doesn't exist, Greenlight is the next best thing. It's a debit card and money app for families that helps kids and teens learn how money really works, so they're prepared for bigger decisions later in life.
Parents can send money to their wallet, get spending notifications, and even set up chores, so kids see the connection between earning, saving, and spending. Mine are already learning to save, give, and invest with me.
Give your kids the financial education many of us didn't get. Join millions of parents and kids already using Greenlight, the #1 family finance and safety app.
Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/moms. That's greenlight.com/moms to get started. Greenlight.com/moms. And now back to the episode.
So before the break, we were really getting into the meat and potatoes of this story. Public pressure was mounting. The police and prosecutors were growing frustrated with what they saw as the Sheppard family shielding Sam Sheppard from questioning. Rumors of an affair with former hospital employee Susan Hayes really fueled that suspicion. And there was a sensational live broadcast inquest at a school gym. And all of this really has put Sam on the defensive. When he admitted to spending a week with Susan Hayes shortly before Marilyn's death, the press really pounced on him and painted him as a liar and just an adulterer. Headlines demanded his arrest, and by the end of July 1954, Sam Sheppard was taken into custody for his wife's murder. Sam's trial began on October 18th, 1954. The trial started just 2 weeks before the November general election, and both the lead prosecutor and the judge who was presiding over the case were running for office. That's got to be, as like a person in this position, the worst possible scenario you can find yourself in.
I can't imagine, because they're trying to prove something. They just are, because of, what they're looking for. But yeah, that would be the worst. And we hear that so many times in like wrongful convictions, that stuff like that goes on.
Yeah. From the start, the odds were stacked against Sam. The Cleveland newspapers had published the names and addresses of 75 potential jurors before the trial even began, and many of those people received anonymous letters and phone calls urging them to convict. I think there are laws against that nowadays, because as a potential juror, I would have been pissed if they published my personal information in the newspaper.
Well, I feel like this is back in the time where it would be like, Mandy and her husband went to Niagara Falls this weekend. Mandy at address blah, 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 blah. It's like crazy stuff where they would be like, this person's out of town this weekend. Here's their address. So I don't think we do that anymore, thank goodness.
No. Yeah, exactly. During jury selection, though, all but one juror admitted to consuming extensive media coverage about the case, and 7 out of the 12 jurors had Cleveland newspapers actually delivered to their homes on a daily basis. So they were seeing all of those articles we talked about, all the ones really just dragging Sam and dragging the police for not pushing this further a lot faster.
Right.
So the requests to move or delay the trial to reduce media influence actually were denied, and as a result, the courtroom was packed, as you might expect. On day 1 of the trial, the jury was actually taken to the Sheppard home, and they were allowed to look at the murder scene and the beach area. Sam was also taken along, and he followed behind in handcuffs. When he saw his young son's bedroom that still had a teddy bear on the dresser, he broke into tears. Prosecutor John Mahone led the argument that Sam Sheppard bludgeoned his pregnant wife to death in the early morning hours of July 4th, 1954. They claimed that he had used a surgical instrument to kill Marilyn and that the motive was his affair with 24-year-old Susan Hayes. They also alleged that he had plans to meet Susan in California just days later. Prosecutors said Sam was a liar with a hot temper who had fabricated the whole story about there being an intruder. They argued that his injuries were self-inflicted, and they pointed out that no murder weapon was ever found. They also emphasized the brutal nature of the crime. There were 35 wounds to Marilyn's head and skull, which suggested that the person who killed her was full of rage towards her. Some of the key points of circumstantial evidence included Sam's inconsistent statements, his refusal to take a lie detector test, and the fact that he called his neighbor first instead of the police. Patrolman Fred Drenkin testified that there was no evidence of forced entry, no sign of a struggle, and no reports of any prowlers that night either. There was also no blood on surfaces such as the desk or drawers, which undermined the claim that an intruder had actually ransacked the house. Dr. Gerber took to the stand and testified that a bloodstain on Marilyn's pillow resembled the outline of a surgical instrument. He showed the jury color slides of the crime scene, of Marilyn's injuries, and of Sam's blood-spattered watch. However, the alleged imprint on Marilyn's body could not be linked to any specific tool, and no weapon was ever recovered.
Susan Hayes was ultimately brought in under tight security. She openly admitted to having a years-long affair with Sam, starting when she worked in his medical office. She detailed intimate encounters at both the Sheppard's home and during trips to California. Susan testified that Sam gave her a watch after she lost hers at a wedding they attended together, and that he also had given her a ring to symbolize their love. She said Sam told her that he was unhappy in his marriage and had discussed divorcing Marilyn. Susan said that she and Sam saw each other regularly between 1951 and early 1954, and they spoke on the phone often. She denied ever seeing Sam act violently, but her testimony still gave prosecutors a motive. Sam wanted to leave his wife, but he was trapped in a personal conflict. Sam's defense team argued that he was an innocent victim of a home intruder and emphasized the lack of direct forensic evidence tying him to the murder, and claimed that the trial was unfair due to the overwhelming media influence and the judge's bias. They presented multiple medical witnesses to support the claim that Sam himself had been attacked. Among those witnesses was Sam's brother, Dr. Sam Sheppard, 4 other doctors, and 3 nurses. I personally think his brother, I would not have even wanted him to testify because who's going to really believe that? So I'm glad they had other ones as well. They described Sam as having serious injuries that included unconsciousness, muscle spasms, shriveled feet from prolonged water exposure, and a possible cervical fracture, which is interesting because before it was that he broke his neck. They also said the injuries were genuine and not likely self-inflicted. Sam took the stand and talked about his marriage with Marilyn, but he told a different story than Susan. Sam said that his marriage was generally happy and there were no serious conflicts or discussion of divorce. He admitted to the affair with Susan, but he denied ever intending to leave Marilyn. Sam gave a very clinical, detached description of the night of the murder.
In closing arguments, the prosecutor attacked Sam's credibility and questioned how a man in his prime could be knocked out by a single blow and why there was no physical struggle in Marilyn's bedroom, which I get it, but also that's kind of like a low insult to be like, what kind of a man are you?
I know.
That was kind of, you didn't have to go below the belt like
Right.
that. He was doubtful, though, of Sam's vague account of events and raised questions about Sam's T-shirt that night. Sam claimed he couldn't remember if he wore a T-shirt during the attack, but prosecutors think that it's doubtful that he wouldn't remember whether or not he was shirtless. The defense highlighted weaknesses in the state's case and pointed out that there was no murder weapon, no clear motive, and no timeline firmly established, even after 5 months of investigating and a lengthy trial. After deliberating for 4 days, the jury found Sam guilty of second-degree murder. He was immediately sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility in 1970, which would be 16 years later. Sam's medical license was immediately revoked. He was sent to the Ohio State Penitentiary at the age of 30. In the years following his conviction, several new developments actually started to cast doubt on Sam's guilt. Renowned criminalist Dr. Paul Kirk was brought in to examine the crime scene after the trial, and his conclusions directly challenged the prosecution's narrative. Dr. Kirk determined that the killer was likely left-handed, which Sam was not, and he also suggested that the murder weapon may have been a flashlight. Most damning of all, though, is that Dr. Kirk identified blood at the scene that did not belong to either Sam or Marilyn Sheppard. Not long after that, a dented flashlight was found near the Sheppard home. Then, in 1959, a new name entered the case file, and that was Richard Eberling. He was a window washer who worked at the Sheppard home, and he had been arrested for theft, and among the items that were found in his possession were some items that belonged to Marilyn. Investigators falsely told Richard that they found his blood at the scene as a ruse just to see what he would say, and Richard admitted that he had cut himself and bled inside the Sheppard home shortly before the murder, but of course that raised suspicion. Despite these new findings, the court denied a motion for a new trial in May of 1955.
Sam's lawyer, William Corrigan, died in 1961. Sam and his brother retained a younger but very determined 29-year-old lawyer, F. Lee Bailey, to take on the case, and we'll get into why you may recognize that name in a minute. He started filing motions and eventually launched a federal habeas corpus petition. Part of the challenge, though, was that during the trial, the Sheppard's house key had remained in police custody, which prevented the defense from doing its own evidence collection. Once the trial was over, they finally gained access and brought Dr. Kirk over to investigate. He confirmed his earlier findings, that the killer was probably left-handed and the blood on a closet door did not belong to either Sam or Marilyn. Sam's new attorney accused the judge of misconduct and bias and pointed to evidence that Judge Blythen was overheard saying that Sam was guilty as heck before the trial even began. Though a lower court eventually ordered Sam's release, the ruling was overturned on appeal, which pushed the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court found that the trial was saturated with inflammatory pretrial and trial publicity, and that reporters had extraordinary access that was disruptive to proceedings. They found that the jury was not sequestered before the trial and only partially sequestered during deliberations, but they were allowed to make phone calls during this time. Sam was interrogated without counsel and then publicly humiliated during the 3-day televised inquest without his attorney present. The judge also failed to control the media or protect the integrity of the trial and allowed it to spiral into what the court called a carnival atmosphere. On July 6, 1966, the court ruled that Sam had been denied a fair trial under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. It emphasized that freedom of the press must not override the right of a fair trial. They ultimately reversed the Sixth Circuit's decision and ordered Sheppard's release unless retried within a reasonable time. After serving 10 years, Sam was released on July 16, 1964, pending a new trial. He was allowed to remain free on bail while the state appealed. 3 days after walking out of prison, Sam got married to a German divorcee named Ariane, who had been corresponding with him in jail. The ceremony was held at a Chicago hotel with Sam's attorney, F. Lee Bailey, as the best man. The marriage really didn't last long, though. They actually got divorced in 1968, while Sam was still awaiting the retrial that would decide his fate. The retrial began on October 24, 1966, under strict courtroom controls. Judge Francis Talty made sure there would not be a repeat of what happened in 1954. Photographers were banned, and press access was limited to in-court reporting only. The defense was built around the physical evidence. Bailey said the murder weapon was wielded by a left-handed person and blood from an unknown contributor was found at the crime scene. Medical experts testified that Sam's injuries were severe and included broken teeth, mouth lacerations, a fractured vertebrae, and a spinal cord bruise, which he just could not have inflicted on himself. The jury began deliberating on November 16, 1966, and later that day, they returned with a verdict. Sam was found not guilty. After more than a decade of fighting to clear his name, Sam walked out of court as a free man.
Life after prison wasn't easy. In 1967, the Ohio Medical Board reinstated Sam's medical license, and he joined the staff at a hospital in Youngstown. But within months, he faced a malpractice lawsuit after a patient died under his care. By 1968, he was battling 2 malpractice suits and a divorce from Ariane. That December, Sam left Bay Village for Gahanna, Ohio. Sam wanted to escape the constant reminders of his past. He opened a small general medical practice where many patients came out just out of curiosity more than a medical need. He reportedly saw about 30 patients a week, but he rarely pursued payment. His career as a neurosurgeon was long gone, and his new practice was just a shadow of his former professional life. In the summer of 1969, Sam went to a beauty shop in Columbus, Ohio, where he met Colleen Strickland, who was the daughter of professional wrestler George Strickland. George was actually a wrestling trainer and had met Sam back in 1945 during a college track meet. When they reconnected, Sam shared that he had actually wrestled in high school, college, and even in prison, and said that he was interested in becoming a professional wrestler. So George agreed to train Sam, and he was actually really impressed with Sam's natural ability, even though he was a bit older and was getting a late start in the sport. That August, Sam entered the ring under the name Killer Sheppard.
No.
And yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. Sorry, Sam, you can't do that. But over the next 8 months, he wrestled in about 200 matches across the country, and he only lost 1 time, which I actually found fascinating for someone who did not have a wrestling background.
Yeah, but not for
professional
someone
one.
whose name was Killer.
Right. True. So he actually would team up with George in tag team matches and donated his earnings to cancer research in honor of his late father. On October 21st, 1969, Sam eloped with George's daughter Colleen, who was 20 years old. I can't either. But unfortunately, less than a year later, on April 6, 1970, Sam died of liver failure at the age of 46. But the debate over his guilt or innocence in the murder of his wife, Marilyn, would continue on.
In 1989, authorities focused on Richard Eberling. That was the former window washer for the Sheppards. He was convicted earlier that year of murdering an elderly widow in an insurance scheme, and over the years he'd also made these cryptic statements about the Sheppard case, at times almost even confessing to knowing more than he ever revealed. His history of violence, the proximity to the family, and his prior admission that he had bled inside their home before the murder made him a compelling alternate suspect. He ended up dying in prison, though, in 1998. Sam's only child, Samuel Jr., who was just 7 years old the night his mom was killed, spent decades of his own life trying to clear his father's name. In 1997, he filed a wrongful imprisonment lawsuit against the state of Ohio. As part of that effort, Sam's body was exhumed for DNA testing. The results confirmed that the blood that was found at the crime scene did not belong to Sam, but that it did match the blood type of Richard Eberling. The most explosive finding, though, was through examining vaginal smear slides taken from Marilyn in 1954. DNA analysis revealed semen that matched Richard, which strongly suggested that Marilyn had been raped, something that was never disclosed in the original trial. And if you remember early on, we said that they did not think that that was even part of it, that it wasn't a sexual assault. These new discoveries aligned perfectly with Sam's longstanding claim that he had interrupted an intruder on the night of the murder. In October of 1999, the state of Ohio had Marilyn's body exhumed in an effort to defend themselves against the $2 million civil suit that Sam Jr. had filed. They hoped to re-examine her injuries and collect more DNA evidence to support their position. Sam thought that this was just a delay tactic to stall the civil case. Even though the state had already acquitted his father, Sam Jr. wanted an official declaration that his father was wrongfully convicted. In 2000, nearly half a century after Marilyn's murder, the case returned to court, this time as an 8-week civil trial brought by her son. His legal team argued that Richard Eberling had committed the murder during an attempted sexual assault. They pointed to the evidence that proved that theory and suggested that a dented flashlight found in Lake Erie was the likely murder weapon. They also used blood spatter evidence to challenge the prosecution's original claims.
The county countered by defending the 1954 verdict and introduced a new theory that a missing lamp may have been the murder weapon. They framed the crime as a domestic homicide and alleged that Sam was disappointed about Marilyn's pregnancy. They said he failed to call for help and that he left his jacket neatly folded, which suggested premeditation, not an intruder attack, which I'm not really sure where they were going with that. I don't understand how folding your jacket means that you plan to kill someone. I think they were really reaching on that one. I'm not really sure. After 10 weeks of testimony from 76 witnesses, the jury unanimously ruled that Sam Reese had not proven his father was wrongfully imprisoned. 6 out of the 8 jurors actually said that they thought Sam was guilty. 2 years later, the legal fight ended when the courts ruled that only the person actually imprisoned was even allowed to bring such a claim, not their family members.
2 years later, they tell him that.
Yeah. The Ohio Supreme Court upheld that decision in 2002, and that pretty much closed the door on any further legal efforts to overturn the original conviction through civil court. Sam Reese was raised by relatives and grew up under the shadow of his father's conviction, and just the cloud of the stigma and trauma that he was facing really shaped every part of his life. As a child, he had recurring dreams of dying alongside his father in the electric chair. In later years, Sam empathized deeply with the unseen victims in similar cases. Sam, who is now age 75, lives in Oakland, California, and writes poetry, advocates against the death penalty, and continues to share his story. In 1995, he co-authored the book Mockery of Justice with Cynthia Cooper. They argued that Sam was wrongfully convicted and named Richard Eberling as the real killer. Sam Reese has also appeared in several documentaries and TV programs, including My Father's Shadow, The Sam Sheppard Story, Nova, and True Crime Scene. In August 1993, The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford, was released. This was loosely inspired by the Sheppard case, and the film reignited public fascination with the Sam Sheppard story. For attorney F. Lee Bailey, the case was really career-defining and launched him into representing other high-profile clients, including the Boston Strangler, Patty Hearst, and O.J. Simpson. Legally, Sheppard versus Maxwell became one of the most significant precedents in constitutional law. The 1966 Supreme Court ruling established that judicial safeguards, including gag orders, jury sequestration, and limits on press access, are really essential in high-profile trials to ensure that a defendant's right to a fair trial is actually honored. This case is still cited today in legal decisions, academic texts, and media law doctrine. No one has ever been charged with Marilyn Sheppard's murder. While DNA evidence has pointed strongly toward Richard Eberling, early testing on his blood was inconclusive, and the debate over Sam Sheppard's guilt or innocence still remains unsettled. What is certain, though, is that the Sheppard case forever changed how the American legal system handles the intersection of media coverage and courtroom justice. And this is a legacy that is written in headlines, legal briefs, and the lives that were left forever altered by this case. This one, Melissa, honestly, I feel like normally in these cases, I will sit here at the end and be like, yeah, I don't know. I can see it going either way. I don't think he did it.
Okay. So did you see the movie The Fugitive? It's one of it's one of my all-time.
Don't ever ask me if I've seen a movie.
Well, then sometimes I'll say, did you watch it? And you're like, of course I've seen that. So I never know where to go with it. When they think of Harrison Ford, they think Star Wars. I think The Fugitive. It's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Okay.
So good. So I think I'm a little bit, I feel like I'm trying not to be biased with my opinions in that movie. Although in that movie, he literally is going to find the one-armed man who killed his wife.
Even though it literally says it's loosely based on the case, so you can't ruin it.
I understand.
It's not a documentary film.
I understand. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, there could actually be another person. I'm just saying I know that like pollutes my mind. It's so hot in the closet that I'm talking from right now that I feel like I'm delusional. But with all the new like DNA evidence and stuff, I totally agree with you that it could possibly be this other person, the window washer. But my problem is a week before, well, this is just circumstantial, but a week before Marilyn tells her mom she's pregnant, one of the top causes of death for women in pregnancy is literally murder, because this would be an inconvenient child to have for somebody like Dr. Sheppard. Not saying it happened, but I can see how people were like, yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense.
I can see why people would suspect the husband because, of course, that's how it's always been. He was the only other person that was home in the house at the time.
Yeah.
But I do have questions about his injuries. Like, I would like to actually know what the truth about his injuries was and whether or not they were exaggerated by his doctor family members who were examining him. I wish I could see Sam Sheppard's actual injuries and determine for myself if I think they could have been self-inflicted. But from what they were saying, I don't... loose teeth? You're going to knock your own teeth loose? Like, to me, it's just, I guess, what lengths do you believe that a doctor would go to cover up a murder? I just don't know that I believe that somebody would, A, have the force, but also B, be able to completely pull off knocking out your own teeth, breaking, or even fracturing your own neck. These are serious injuries that I don't feel like you could or would inflict on yourself because the actual danger of causing permanent irreversible damage is so high that you would not necessarily do that.
Counterpoint. Two things. He was a neurosurgeon, so he knows exactly how you can hurt yourself in what way. Like, he knows how people come in and are injured and live and everything else. And also, he was a wrestler. The guy was able to move around. He was literally winning these fights. Like, he was able to physically do a lot of things. So that's what kind of is interesting about the story is, unfortunately, it's always going to kind of have this part of, it's like shadow of, did he do it? Did he not do it? And everyone's going to have a different opinion. I feel for his son because obviously he's fought to have the state say, no, we did the wrong thing. But unfortunately, he's probably never going to get that because the state never wants to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just do feel like, I don't know. I in my gut tells me that Sam Sheppard did not do this particular crime. but I'm not saying that he was necessarily a great guy. I'm just saying I don't feel like he did this.
No, I agree with you. This was really an interesting one, and one I'm so glad we did. And Mandy, watch The Fugitive. Tell your husband, watch it.
I'm going to.
It's amazing. I think it really will stand up.
He's probably already watched it. So
yes, he's watched it.
he'll
Tommy Lee Jones. It's one of the best movies of all time.
Yeah. I will definitely go watch that. I will go watch it maybe tonight. I have nothing to watch tonight. So.
Perfect. No, you won't. But
all right,
ahead.
guys. Yeah. Well, thank you for listening this week. That was our story. We will be back next week. Same time, same place. New story.
Have a great week.
Bye.